Welcome to Beyond the IEP. Here is your host, Dr. Dan.
So today's seminar, what is the role of a BCBA in an IEP? We do have a special guest today who will be joining us, and that's Wendy Broder. Super excited to have her. We'll get into the questions and we'll learn all about her background and all the kind of different hats she wears. She is a BCBA. She is a founder and clinical director of Able Kids ABA, as well as a Nevada Educational Advocacy Tutoring Services. She works for Greenlight ABA. She went to FIT, and she has a lot of professional interests, including ACT, trauma-informed ABA, parent coaching, and a lot of other things. She also used to work in a school district as well. So let's get right into it. Wendy, so you have extensive experience in special education behavior analysis. How has becoming a BCBA changed the way you approach IEP meetings compared to when you were solely a special educator? And if you want to tell us a little bit more about your background.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here today, and thank you to all of you who are here today listening to this. Just to give you a little bit of background about my experience. So I actually started off my career as a special education teacher. I was an early childhood teacher, actually in the same school district that Dan works in. And I taught there for 20 years and then became a special education facilitator, which is what Dan does as well. So I did work in that role as a facilitator and working as an LEA in meetings for several years. And so I did get to experience both sides of the table as a teacher and as the leader of IEP meetings. And I did actually leave the school district in 2018 to start my own business, which was quite unexpected, but it was a very nice career change for me. And I started my own business in the state of Nevada Educational Advocacy and Tutoring Services. And it's we have educational therapists that work with children all around the city of Las Vegas. And I also advocated. So that was one way that I was able to, the first time actually, that I was able to really, truly sit on the other side of the table and work with the IEP team coming from a different perspective. And I have to say, so first I was working, in advocacy and tutoring, and I started my own company. I started my own school during COVID. And that was also very unexpected. So when COVID hit, we had a lot of children that were sitting at home and not able to go to school, and they were working on their Chromebooks. And I was fortunate to be able to start my own school for children. And during this time, I had a BCBA that was working with me. And so I have to say that I had a rather life-changing event, and I'll never forget the conversation because I didn't get to work a lot with BCBAs during this time. And the BCBA actually told me that I didn't know anything about behavior because I was an educator. And that was quite an eye-opener for me. And I found it not only offensive, but it really opened my eyes. And at that point, I really thought that I did know behavior, having worked in education for 20 plus years. But it really made me think. And I thought, do I really know behavior? I'm not sure if I do. I better see if I do or not. So at that point, I decided I was going to go start applying to schools. So I applied to several different schools and I chose FIT, and the rest is history. I've been a BCBA for 2 years now, and I still consider myself to be a teacher as well. So that's kind of just a little bit about my background. And I apologize for my sort of stilted speech. I am a little bit nervous. It's my first time doing this, so I do apologize. Anyway, so I do have to say, though, that becoming a BCBA has really changed my perspective of how, it has changed my approach of how I approach the IEP teams and work with teachers. And my experience as a special educator really does affect the way I work with IEP teams. Absolutely, 100%, because I am able to see the perspective of an educator because I was wearing that hat for so many years, and I do know what it's like to be an educator. So I do know what it's like to be in that role. So I feel like I do have a very unique perspective of that role. And so I do approach the team from a very collaborative approach rather than what, is the typical, I'm sorry to use that word, but the typical BCBA approach, which is often misperceived, unfortunately, which I don't know if you want to get into now or later.
Yeah. Okay. No, so that's very interesting. Having that background, that's very unique to have that special education teacher background, to have been through a lot of these meetings. Now you put on another hat as a BCBA and you work for this agency and you have these businesses as well, and then to come in from that role because you know what everyone is going through in that room. You've been through it a million times before, and just having that other perspective with you, having that experience, what is just it sounds like it really does help your role to show empathy. And what the thing is, when I talk to BCBAs, because listen, I'm kind of still on the school district side. I haven't really been an IP as a BCBA as an outside BCBA, but I've been in many IEPs with BCBAs, and it's run the gamut from they're super helpful and collaborative to they're just kind of pushing us around, telling us what to do, making us change goals, rubbing us the wrong way, and then in the middle. Going back to what that person said to you, so you became a BCBA, and as you worked there, someone said, you don't know anything about behavior because you're an educator. Would you say, and I'm not trying to like stare you up, we're not saying everyone, is this, I don't know if I want to use common, is this a misconception? Is this an attitude out there that you've noticed from some BCBAs about educator or special education teachers or educators? Is this common you've seen, or I mean, I can tell you what I've seen, but what are your thoughts? Is that
Well,
common that you've encountered?
so I just want to be really specific and say that this is just my perspective. And I can only speak from my experience, obviously, and I can't speak for anybody else. But I know that when I first became a BCBA and I was working at a clinic, it was my experience that I feel like I was discriminated against a little bit. And I know I'm using that term a little bit loosely, but I felt that I was coming in with a lot of background. To me, I felt like I was coming in with a lot of background because I had worked with families for about 25 years total, and children. I had such an extensive knowledge of child development, especially in this age group. I mean, my background is in early childhood, and all the children at the clinic were all in that age group. And so I felt like I was coming in with a very strong background and knowledge, yet I was called the baby BCBA in my clinic. And to be called baby anything at my age, I mean, look at me, I've got gray hair. It felt a little upsetting. And so, yeah, it hurt a little bit. And so, but I do feel that I think that, yeah, thanks for the smiley face. Yeah, it was a wake up call for me that, okay, yeah, you may have been an educator for 25 years, but we have to just put that all aside and it doesn't count for anything now because you're a BCBA now and it doesn't matter what your background was. And that made me feel terrible because I really thought that there could be a way to utilize my special education background and use that in what I'm doing in my practice as a BCBA. And it felt that the other BCBAs that I was working with were telling me that it really didn't have any impact in what I'd be doing moving forward. I'm learning now in my practice 2 years later, where I'm 2.5 years into my practice now, and I'm finding that it's not true. I'm finding that I can utilize my background and I really can use my experience to propel me as a BCBA. There are a lot of similarities. It just may be different terminology, but all the information that I learned as a special educator was very helpful. I just think that there are a lot of biases that were in play, unfortunately. I think there are. I think that there are BCBAs out there, unfortunately, who do feel that if you're coming from a special education background, it's not pertinent. And on the other hand, looking at it from the other perspective as well, that special educators also feel very off-put by BCBAs. I can say that I might have felt that way as a special educator. I don't know. I don't really think so. I think that I, as a special educator, was very open to learning, but not all educators are, Dan. You might have seen that too. There is that, stereotype of an educator that feels like I already know what I need to know. I've got my classroom exactly the way I want it. I don't want any, so-called specialist coming in and telling me what I need to do differently. There is that stereotype of that type of educator. But then there are also educators, and we all know these educators, Dan, who are just very overwhelmed. There are so many expectations nowadays of educators, both special educators and general educators. You were talking before about LRE and how, anything that's put into an IEP has to be implemented. It is the law. So we have general education teachers that have children with special needs in their classrooms, and they are, by law, they have to implement everything that is on that IEP, and they are doing the best they can. They may have one child that has autism in their class, with 26 other children in their class, and they are trying their best to make it work. And they might not have the tools they need in their school district to make that work, but they're doing the best they can. And they don't want, a specialist coming in from the outside telling them what they need to do. They already have so many things going on. Like they have to grade papers, they have to do testing, they have their principal breathing down their neck telling them what they need to do. They have parents yelling at them and telling them, what they need. And it's just so much. And, you and I know this from, our experience. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it can be a lot when a BCBA comes in with the parent telling them this is what we want from you. So the delivery of the information is so important. How we approach how we approach the educator in the team is so important, because we can make a huge impact and we can be so helpful, but it's all about the approach.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you say that. And that would be the number one thing I would say to BCBAs and BCBAs watching this coming in, is to show empathy and to not look down on anyone on that team. Absolutely. You have a lot of experience coming in. When you became a BCBA, special education teachers have a ton of experience, and that has to be respected. They might take data differently than BCBAs. They may approach it a little differently. Their reports and FBAs and BIPs might look a little different, but they absolutely have to be respected. And that would be number one. So there's no looking down on teachers, no looking down on the schools. You do not want to come in and do that. And you don't want to approach an IEP meeting or a team that way, because you are very much going to be, the team won't be happy. Let's put it that way. I mean, I'm glad we got that
Very
out of the
true.
way first.
Yeah, it's very true.
Now, what would you say? So new BCBAs and maybe veteran BCBAs, they might feel uncertain because, they're in an IEP meeting and it's kind of like, better than anyone. You have the special education teacher is typically the one that will review the IEP. There's speech has to go if they have speech. A lot of times they have speech. There might be an occupational therapist. They have to go. Parent has to talk. And then a BCBA is kind of sitting there in their meeting. They're typically, let's be honest, they're kind of rushed, some of these meetings. There's not a ton of time set aside for them. And the teachers have to go. Parents have to go. So what would you tell like a new BCBA or veteran BCBA? What can they contribute to that IEP team, to that short amount of time that they're there? When do they speak up? When do they not speak up? What are your thoughts on that? I know it's
Right.
tough.
That's a really good question. I think it's a very sensitive topic. You have to be careful not to speak up and tell the teachers, like we talked about, what they're doing wrong. Like, well, that's not data collection. That's not how we collect data. Or I need you to do this, because teachers, like I said, are so stressed out already. And I think something that we need to consider also is just that perspective, that BCBAs are used to working with one child at a time, and we're looking at this one child, right? And teachers are looking at a whole classroom of children. And when I was an advocate, I actually had a teacher say to me, well, I can't do that. I've got a whole classroom full of children. I can't possibly implement this with my whole, when I have 26 other children. And, part of me wanted to say, but you have to, we have to help this one child. Yes, we do have to help this one child. But let's try to find a way to make it feasible for the teacher so that we're not completely overwhelming this teacher. There has to be a way that we can meet them in the middle. And we can start in small steps. So let's find a way to help them with meaningful data collection and interpretation. Let's find something, we have so many tools at our disposal. We have even fun ways to collect data to start off that can be, and kind of frame it in a way that maybe we can really get the teachers buy-in. We could start with some play check data collection. We can talk to them about momentary time sampling. To me, these are fun methods of data collection. So I would suggest asking, talking to the teacher, talking to the team about ways that we can actually make data collection feasible. I have some suggestions. I have some ideas about data collection. How can we make this feasible for you? These are some feasible ideas. Also talking about, when the time is right, we can talk about some possible antecedent, interventions that could be helpful for the class, for the child, that could work within the classroom setting. But also seeing like if there's a time that we could set up with the teacher to work with them, maybe individually, not when the classroom is in session necessarily, but outside of the meeting, outside of the classroom session to talk about what some feasible options are. Like, hey, I can give you some ideas right now about data collection, but when could we possibly set up a time to meet so I can talk with you about some other ideas that I have, and you can tell me what's feasible and what's not feasible for you in your classroom, so that we're coming across as non-threatening and non-critical. We don't want to appear to be critical of what they're already doing.
Well, that's an interesting point you made. So in an IEP, so right. How do you as a BCBA it kind of sounds like you're walking a tightrope just listening to this, like it's a balancing act because yeah, your focus is on this one kid in the meeting. Their focus, I mean, here an autism class would have 8 kids. So their focus is on that kid and on the 7 other. If they're, gen ed teacher might be the 25 other kids. So how do we focus, like, how do we kind of bridge that gap in terms of my focus is that one, your focus is on the entire class. This data has to be done. And I don't want to overload you and give you too much to do in terms of data, but I don't want to give you too little to where you're not doing justice to this kid and their goals and their IEPs and what they need. Like, where's the middle ground? How do you kind of find that middle ground? Because it's kind of like it's really the way you're talking about and the way the way I see it, it's really kind of walking a minefield because you can also talk about data, but they might be told by the school district that they have to use their data sheets also. Like they have to use
Right.
particular data sheet. So then it's like, okay, so how do you go around that? Or how do you work with that?
Right. That is tough. I would say because their facilitator or principal might have given them, just a frequency data sheet, and that might be all they're taking at this point. It might be something it's not enough. It's not sufficient data for what we need. Maybe they're not collecting data, they're not creating graphs. And these are things that we need to collect for this child in order to make meaningful progress. So what I would do is, like I said, I would try to find a time to sit down and show the teacher what we need to do and say, let's try to find a middle ground here and give them examples but start in small steps, like maybe not overwhelm them by giving them, the most difficult, challenging data collection that we have, but give them something that they can do. We start in small steps and show them how we can do it and demonstrate it for them. It depends on whether or not we can have somebody in the classroom doing it for them. Like if they have and if they have ABA in the classroom, then, let's say the RBT will be doing that for them. But if not, then if there's a classroom assistant, it's something that the classroom assistant can be taught how to do. They can be collecting very simple data collection, something that we can do. We can work with the classroom assistant to teach them how to do this. Analyzing the data and all that is something that we could work on with the IEP team and the teacher specifically. But in most cases, we would hope that this is something that the teacher would welcome, but it's not always something that logistically occurs, unfortunately. I've definitely come across teachers that get very offended and do not want to participate in anything that we are suggesting.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Okay.
It is a difficult, it is a tightrope.
Right.
It is something that needs to be done. And I mean, also we do have the support of the parent, and that is a huge factor. We are there because the parent wants us there as well.
Right. You didn't invite yourself to the meeting.
Exactly. So I think the fact that we have the parent's support is tremendous. And there are steps that the parent can take if the team does not collaborate with us. So, but I do agree that I do feel that we should be taking small baby steps with the team if we are getting resistance.
And you can only do what you can do. I mean, you're not
Right.
They can listen to you or not. That's the thing. It's
Right. They're going to do what they're going to do. And, we could try to put something in place and come back at the next review 6 months later, and they might not have implemented anything. And we're really powerless to do anything. And it's the parent that has the ability to make changes. What are your thoughts, Dan?
So no, I agree with everything you said. I think listen, I have a lot of sympathy for both sides. What I would
Right.
like to do, if my small part, and I know you want to do because you come from both worlds, is have them work more together. There are
Yes.
schools where they allow BCBAs and RBTs in, and there are schools that have banned them and everything in between. So it's unfortunate to me when I see a hostile relationship between the BCBA and the clinic and the school, because really they should be working together, ideally for the kid. And doesn't always happen. And I think that's kind of maybe the reason behind this seminar is to try to, if whatever way we can, help on that. How do you
Right.
handle, so let me go on a little tangent on what you said. How do you handle a hostile IEP? Let's say they don't want you there. You're getting that look from several of them. You have that teacher that's hostile. What do you do?
That's a good question. I try to just be as well, you always keep your professionalism about you. Remember who you are and what your job is. You're there for the child. Okay. So you always maintain your highest level of professionalism and don't argue. Do not get into a back and forth argument with the team. That is like just paramount, number one. So just remember you're there to support the parent and the child, and you're there for the child's best interest. That's number one. You can always have the meeting reconvened at a different time. The meeting could be reconvened by the parent. That's something you could talk about with the parent beforehand. If it is very hostile and the parent feels like this is, it's not a productive meeting, the parent could always ask for the meeting to be reconvened at a different time if it's not going anywhere. But, I think just keeping a very professional demeanor and saying something to the effect of, look, I feel that we are, maybe this is going in a direction that, I certainly didn't intend for it to go. I am here representing, I'm here with the family. I'm here for Johnny. My intention for this meeting today was to help Johnny. I'm here to help you. I want you to understand that I'm here to collaborate with you, not for, to be your adversary. So I think just to bring it down a few notches. Always talk in a, quiet tone. Don't raise to the level of the team. Whatever, level they get to, bring it down a few levels. Always remember who you are. You're a behavior therapist. Remember your ABA. Do not engage in that.
Yeah.
So just bring it down a few notches and stay professional. And just when they're quiet, when you see an opening, just tell them exactly what your function is, what your purpose of the behavior. Oh, sorry, purpose of your being there is. You're here to collaborate. You're here to help this child. We are here to help this child have success in life, to make socially significant change in his life. You want to help this child be successful in school. How can we work towards a common goal? We are here to do that. We are here to help collaborate towards a common goal, which is his success. And if it's not going to be today, maybe we could come back to the table on a different day and do that. So that's what
Yeah,
I do. Maybe
I
somebody
like
else
that.
has. What do you think, Dan?
I like that. No, I like that. I think that bringing it back to the kid while you're there, what we're talking about, the best interests of the child. Listen, I've had to stop meetings that got out of hand.
Yeah.
I was the one who stopped them, but I think that also, I think it's you being there as the BCBA. I don't want to say you're like I think people are watching you from the team. Like, I kind of think
Oh,
their eyes
yeah.
are on you, even maybe more than the parent to an extent. But
Yes.
you do have to come in respectful of the team, and I would
Yes.
use flattery. I mean, if you're asking me, I would compliment the great job of the team and the special education teacher, make myself part of
Yes.
the team, be charming or whatever. I don't know what the word is, but
Yes.
flattery, you're there to serve them. So and I think that comes back to your very first comment, and in terms of don't be the snobby BCBA, don't be the one looking
Right.
down on people. And
Well, when
listen,
I come in, yeah. I was just
I
gonna say, when
think
I come into the meeting, Dan, like I tell them, look, I'm coming in a certain role as a BCBA right now, but I need you to know that this is not this is my second career. This is not who I always was. I was a special educator myself, excuse me, and I sat on your side of the table. So I
no, that
know
can help.
everything that you go through. And the suggestions I may present today, if that's why I'm here, to help you, to make suggestions. The suggestions I make today will hopefully be things that can help you.
Yeah.
But that's my role. So I want them to perceive me as non-threatening.
I think the empathy part is real. I think reiterating
Mhm.
what you said earlier, I respect what you guys are doing and I respect what you bring to the table. So yeah, it's a give and take. And listen, like I tell people, there are some meetings that are just hostile. Someone's in a bad mood.
Yeah.
They might be in the middle, almost close to due process. They're not happy. This could be their fifth or sixth meeting. Could be a long. By the time you come in, they could have already had a couple meetings that have run 3 hours. Who knows? And whatever. Like, it's just not going to be good. Not every experience in life or in
Right.
these are good.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
just as the behavior, right? That's how you might be viewed in an IEP. Is there a way to expand that, our role with the helping with the student or the teacher or whatever, beyond that for communication independence, executive functioning, quality? But because so much of what we do is more than just behavior, right?
Yes, it is. And I think that there is, to kind of tie it in with, you know, the misconceptions of BCBAs. I think that they do misperceive us as the behavior person. Here comes the behavior person, and we are misperceived very often. But I think what we really need to impart with to the teachers, the educators, is that we are here to make socially significant behavior change with children. And that's not just with, by reducing maladaptive behaviors. That's not what we're all about. We're here to make socially significant change. And so we are looking to replace behaviors, maladaptive behaviors with functional behaviors. We want to increase, you know, functional communication, and we want to increase independence and advocacy, self-advocacy, and adaptive living skills and social skills and relationships. So we want the entire team to understand that we are not just the behavior person who's looking to find ways to collect data and reduce the what they might call the negative behaviors in the classroom, but we want to replace them with functional behaviors that will help that student improve their lives, not just in the future, but now and in the future.
Yeah, there's so much more that goes into what we do as BCBAs, what you do. Behavior is one piece of it, and behavior can encompass so many things, right?
Well, yeah.
Yep.
So I think, asking in the IEP too, I think talking to the team, and when I say team, I also mean the parent, because the parent is a very significant part of that team. What skills does this student need to be successful? Not only in the school setting, but also out in the community and at home. What does he need? And then when we can talk about as a group and we can collaborate and find what those skills are, then we can all work together to work on replacing those more maladaptive or challenging behaviors with skills that the student needs to be successful in all
Right.
environments.
So, for example, in it, you get to the goals, and it seems like BCBAs are kind of the idea is really maybe they should only speak up for the behavior goal. Obviously, that's a critical part of the IEP. But are there other goals BCBAs can give their opinions on, or you've given your opinion on in IEPs? That's
I
just
believe so. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I don't believe that we should only stick to the behavior goals necessarily. I think we're probably told that we should, but I think it's okay to talk about how we can measure goals, the progress, and in other areas as well, especially the replacement behaviors. I mean, look at our treatment plans. We talk about replacing, behaviors, more challenging behaviors with functional behaviors. Then that includes language, communication, and social skills. I mean, behavior is everything that we do. So yes, we can talk about other things other than maladaptive behaviors.
right. Yeah, we could talk even accommodations, right? When we get to the accommodations
Absolutely.
and modifications.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We should be talking about those points, giving
You can
different
talk
ideas.
about, yeah, like when you get to the accommodations, modifications part, you can talk about maybe what you do with the child in the clinic or the student in the clinic, in the home. A lot of times I've been in IEPs with BCBAs and they'll be like, oh, I do this or try that. I had one that like a cool down or self monitoring,
Right.
cool down and things they use that we hadn't thought about as the team. And they were
Right.
helpful. And then I said, oh, please send it to me. And they did. And we used it.
Right, exactly. I think that the accommodations and modifications section is actually a great section where we could provide some suggestions, especially like you said, those antecedent strategies that we use in our therapy sessions. What are some things that we put in place that could be helpful for that particular student? Using a break card, and think about how it could look in the classroom. Is this something that could be implemented in the classroom? Could the child request breaks? Could he, have it, like you said, a cool down area? Could there be fidgets that he uses? Could there be, one of those chair strap things? I'm not really sure what they're called. Those, things that they can move on their chair to help them sort of sit, might help them remain in their seat during instruction. But there are all kinds of strategies that we could suggest that could be helpful and increase their attention and engagement during school, lessons during school.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier, when you make these suggestions, I guess you want to have in mind how it would be used in a school setting, in a classroom setting, have it
Mm.
something that's easy for the teacher to implement, not difficult, self-explain, or you whatever the way you can explain it to them, but as easy as possible, right? As
Exactly.
even if you have to modify it, I guess, right?
Right. Just minimal effort on the teacher's part so that it's not going to be extremely challenging for them to implement. So you get buy-in.
Yeah, you get buy-in, confidence. Any other
Right.
misconceptions that teachers, administrators, I guess we haven't talked about them. That's a big piece. Or parents, anything you can think of that parents have about what a BCBA should. Listen, parents, a lot of them, this is new to them too. I mean, IEP and all that, ABA and all this stuff. And I'm curious what parents think about, I'm bringing my BCBA to the IEP. What do I expect the BCBA to do? Anything you can think about that, parents, administrators?
Right. Well, I would say that I think that sometimes parents expect the BCBA to kind of come in and sort of tell the IEP team what they need to do. Like this,
Okay.
you're the behavior person. You come in and sort of fix the IEP, tell them how to write the goals, and you're
Right.
the expert at writing treatment plans and writing. You should be able to tell them how to fix my child's behavior, and it doesn't work that way. That's how we come in and become enemy number one. So we definitely don't want to do that. So I think that priming the parent prior to the meeting is the best thing that we could possibly do. Make sure that they understand what our role is in the meeting before we go in, so that they know that we're coming in as a collaborator, not somebody's going to come in and ask the team to change everything that they're doing. We're not their advocate either. Like, we have to be very careful not to come
Right.
in and step on toes. I mean, I was an advocate, and I know how an advocate can be perceived, and they are not perceived fondly, So, and as a BCBA, we do not want to be perceived like that. We want to come in as a true collaborator, and so the parent needs to be aware of that they're bringing us in as somebody who's coming in to collaborate, not to advocate for the child in all areas. That's not what we're there for. We're there in a role as team collaborator.
Is it helpful to
So,
explain that to a parent before the IEP? Talk to
absolutely,
them about, like,
yes.
what do you think my role is in this meeting? And it is an
Mhm.
important meeting for them. And again, you have that one a year, and then you have the one every 3 years, and sometimes they're on the same
Right,
day. And even if you can call them whenever you want, it's not a lot of meetings. So, yeah, is it
right.
worth it to talk to a parent about what your role will be in the meeting?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I do think it is worth it. And I think that even perhaps spending a little time looking at the IEP with the parent, if you're willing to do that, take a little time to look at either, the previous IEP, or, if they send home a draft prior to the IEP, take a look at that with the parent and just kind of have an idea of what we're going into before you actually go into the meeting, and discuss, what your role will be in that meeting, and what are the parents' goals? How do they feel about this IEP that's coming up? What are their thoughts on it? And then how we can help and how we plan to help, so that they're aware of what's coming.
Right. And it's interesting because your your role, I mean, really, you're giving suggestions. At the end of the day, the teacher or LEA is behind the computer making updates or writing down in blue pen or red pen, whatever color they're using, and they're going to change it. But so it's really, you're a suggestion person. Like, you don't
Yes.
control what they write. You can suggest what to write, but you can't tell them what to write. And it
Correct.
so yeah, I mean, I don't know how much parents really understand or realize that. But at the same time, I've been in many IEPs where parent is distrustful of us as the IEP team, and they're looking over at the BCBA. Every question I ask, every question a teacher talks about, they're like, "What does the BCBA think?" So they're looking at them. What I
Right,
mean?
right, and that can also breed, you know, hostility or distrust mistrust with the BCBA in the whole IEP team. Like, wait a minute, what's happening here? Because now the parents has brought you in, and it almost appears like you and the parent are in cahoots, and so you will not be thought of as a collaborator with the team. You're thought of as being in cahoots with the parent, and they're not going to want to work with you, because the team will not trust you, because they know that you're working with closely with the parent. And that's, I mean, not in every case, but that could occur. So I think it's and you're not, like I said, you're not there as the parent's advocate. So that's, you have to be very careful to define your role before you go into the meeting with the parent and
Right.
talk about what your role is before you go in there.
Right. Yeah.
Even talking about the goals, look at the goals, talk about how they could be changed, and what your suggestions will be, but you have to let them know that the team is not under any obligation to make those changes just because you suggest them. The goals or the accommodations or, present levels, any suggestions that you make, will be taken into consideration, hopefully, but there's no guarantee that they will be utilized, put into place in the IEP.
Yeah. It's very interesting because the BCBA, yeah, the parent brought you, that's why you're there. But
Mhm.
it's not all necessarily what the parent thinks or wants. And there is some give and take. And then there's times where the BCBA not has to, but should maybe agree with the team and what they're bringing.
Right.
I remember going back and forth with the BCBA. Again, I'm representing the school, I'm the LEA, and and he wanted me to change like the behavior goals, like radically change them. And then he's looking at the parent, and I'm like, "What do you think?" And the parent, like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever that BCBA wants." But and it left a bad taste in our mouth because it was minimizing what we had done because we'd spent a lot of time writing it. So it wasn't like, "Well, I like this
Right.
part, maybe add this part." It was like, "No, no, we're gutting this," and then we had to meet again and again and the team felt bad. The team was not happy
Mhm.
with individual,
Right.
but kind of had to listen because the parent was like, "Yeah, I want that." So there is give and
Mhm.
take on your part, right?
Absolutely. You have to compromise. And then sometimes, if the parent is feeling very uncomfortable and you can see that they keep looking at you for some suggestions or for, just try to gather what you're feeling at that time, you can also request a moment. And you could say, look, I need to take five
Right.
minutes to step out with the parent and we're going to go discuss. So that's also a tool that you can request, or use when needed. So if you're just feeling like the parent is uneasy, or if you are basically feeling that, okay, the parent feels uneasy, but I agree with the school team right now that, we have to compromise on this. Maybe the parent isn't in full agreement and we had discussed this and I had agreed with the parent, but now I'm listening to what the team is saying.
Right.
And I know that we're not going to get what the parents and I had discussed. And this is the best we can do for now. Sometimes you have to accept that this is the best we can do in this scenario. And I need to talk to the parent about this, but I'm not going to embarrass the parent in front of the team. I could risk losing this parent, which I obviously don't want to do. So I'm going to request 5 minutes to step out. So we will ask for a brief recess and step outside with a parent and discuss with them and see if we can get on the same page and come back in and continue the meeting. So that's always an option.
And I'm really glad you brought that up. And I want BCBAs listening this to understand that you do have the right to stop a meeting. You can break for 5 to 10 minutes, whatever you need, and you can always reconvene. If the parent is uncomfortable, if the parent is maybe not even understanding what you're talking about or not clear on what's going on, you can say, can we have a break? I want to speak to the parent. If the parent's crying, if the parent's upset, because these can get emotional, you always have that Kleenex box somewhere on the table. Then yeah, let's reconvene. Listen, you have that right. It's not about let's keep going, go to the next one, keep going. It's about this should be a quality document. So I don't know if BCBAs are even aware of that you can stop a meeting and reconvene. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's critical.
The CBA can ask or the parent can ask. You can also put the power into their hands and say, okay, mom or dad, I don't want to be the one that says, okay, we're going to stop this right now because I want to put the power back into your hands. So I want you to walk back in and say, I think that this meeting is progressing in a manner that I don't feel comfortable. I would like to stop this meeting and reconvene at a later date.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm big proponent of that. All right.
Mhm.
So we talked about that one. Okay. FBAs and BIPs. Now, these are not necessarily like, you have your IEP and you have your FBA BIP. But what would you say? Like, how can a BCBA help with them? What makes a good FBA BIP one that's just, not as good? I know you've seen a million of them and you've written a million of them and on both sides for clinic and schools and with teachers.
Yeah.
What would you kind of say about that? And how can a BCBA help with that?
Well,
Help a school with that? Help a teacher?
yeah. And I can definitely attest to that, Dan. I have seen all kinds of BIPs, even when I was working in the school district, I have to say. Dan and I both worked, well, I did work in the same school district as Dan, and it's a big school district. It's sprawling. It's, I
Ooh,
think, what, the fifth largest school
largest,
district
yeah.
in the whole nation. And I have to say, I don't know how it is now, Dan, but when I was there, there wasn't a lot of consistency across the district in behavior plans or IEPs. They were all very, very different. And I felt like there wasn't really a system of checks and balances. So it really kind of depended upon who the facilitator was at each school looking over the behavior plans and the IEPs. They would kind of check it and see if it looked sufficient. And if it did, we'd go through with it and hold a meeting and then lock it. After the meeting, the parent signs, lock the IEP, and now that's your document. Has it gotten any better? Or is it pretty much the same?
We can work on that. We can.
Okay. No answer.
That needs help. But
It needs help. But yeah, okay. So, but the BIPs, okay. So I don't know. I mean, I remember as an educator too, I felt like the behavior plan document was something I did not have a lot of training on, to be perfectly honest. There were prompts. We had to answer the prompts to the best of our knowledge, but it really wasn't based on data collection, to be perfectly honest. It was just based on answer these prompts. What does the client need? Answer these prompts. What will the client do in these situations? And that's it. That's your BIP. And oh my goodness, going into IEP meetings as an advocate and as a BCBA, I've been appalled. Like, oh my goodness, this is your BIP. Okay, let's talk about your BIP. Let's get the BIP out now and hold the BIP part of the meeting. Now, the BIP doesn't have to be part of the IEP. It's a separate part. It's not part of the IEP document, just to be specific. So they actually can hold that in a separate meeting, or they can hold it after the IEP has been completed. So typically, the people that are the mandatory members of your IEP meeting can leave at that point. So just so you're aware, when you see your general education teacher get up and leave, that's fine. They don't have to be there for the BIP portion of the meeting. So the teacher will often sit there and go over the BIP with the parent, and they'll read through the document. They just sort of review it and say, okay, this is the BIP. Here we go. I'm going to read it to you. And that's what they do. But it can be kind of shocking to see that it doesn't really holds a lot of water. And to be perfectly honest, I've seen a lot of BIPs kind of get written and then shoved into a drawer. Are they really followed? It's more of just, I've seen the BIPs sort of be a document that's written sort of as a formality, but not really followed. And, they should be written and then provided to each member of the school team that works with this client. So if the client goes to art, music, PE, every single individual that works with this client needs to have a copy of this document so that they're all following the same BIP. So, but that wasn't my experience when I was working in schools, unfortunately. Not my experience. Maybe in some schools, some teachers, yes, but it's not. I can't say that with 100% fidelity that this happens, or that this happens with 100% fidelity.
Just to piggyback. So on this topic, I've gotten FBAs from clinics that have been like 55 pages. Like these huge long, and in a school district, it's 2 pages, 3. So
right.
Very small. You get some indirect data, some direct data, and you put it together, and you have the boxes, and this is the replacement behavior, operational definition, antecedent variables, reinforcement. But it's not this big mess. So how should a BCBA? They might not have ever seen a BIP from a school district or a teacher. I mean, what should their expectations be once they come across it, and how can they help? Like, what if they see a lousy one, or needs one that needs work?
Right. That's a good question. What should they say? Well, I wouldn't interject and say, well, that first thing you want to do is, first of all, don't interject and say, well, good God, that's horrible. Or that's your BIP? How are you going to implement that? Or how is that going to change the behavior? Well, obviously, you don't want to say those things, even though you may be thinking them. And, and the teacher may think, well, this is a great BIP. This is the best BIP I've ever written.
Right. And they might not have been trained on it, like you said.
Right. So, and that's the thing to remember, that this is the document that they were given, and they have not perhaps gotten any training on this, and they are just writing it based on the information that they've been given. And they may not, like you said, they may not have been trained on how to write a BIP. So they're just doing the best they can. So we want to, what we want to do is we want to compliment them on the job that they did. Praise them the best we can, and perhaps say something to the effect of, may I give some input? Would you like some input on this? I have some ideas. I have some suggestions that I feel could be helpful. May I give some suggestions on this, or how we could improve on this to tighten it up a little bit and see how the reception is on this. I found that to be a way to kind of ease myself into that without causing the teacher to become alarmed or insulted. And then to give some suggestions on, giving some more, meat and potatoes on, giving some more information. How can we really make this a heartier bit, or get some more information here to really make this successful, because they are generally really lacking.
Yeah, listen, it sounds like it sounds like a BCBA has their work cut out for them coming in and trying to help.
Yes.
You have the FBA BIP, you have the IEP, you have, maybe helping with classroom suggestions. Anything, should the focus be more on the IEP than the BIP? Should it be equal? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? Should there be a priority?
Well, I think that honestly, I say they're both very important, but in all honesty, I think what's going to be really helpful is ensuring that, okay, so I feel that the accommodations and modifications in the IEP is a section where we really can make a strong impact by giving antecedent and consequence strategies.
Okay.
Okay. Those are ideas where we can give, really strong strategies that can make an impact on a day-to-day basis for the teacher. I also feel that with the BIP, that is something, giving them strategies that they can use on a daily basis that will make their day easier and help the child at the same time and give them a better quality of life, and that their school environment will be more productive for them, and they'll be happier in their environment. I think that's, an area where we could really make an impact. Anything that will really improve their day to day, I think will be, I think that's an important focus for us. And I think the BIP is a really important focus for us because of it. So I think it is really important for us to focus on it. I think that we really need to. And if we can take the time to sit down and really work with the teacher, as long as they're open to listening to us and make those changes with us, I think we really can have a strong impact.
And you can call those meetings. So I think BCBA
Mhm.
should know. Listen, I mean, again, being on the school district side, I've had separate meetings, like you said, outside of the IEP with the parent and the BCBA, and just talking about the
Mhm.
BIP, the behavior intervention plan. So I've had
Right.
those meetings, and they've been several. I've actually really enjoyed them. I found them
Mhm.
helpful. I found that collaborate with the teacher, of course, not, so the
Yes. Right.
teacher facilitator, whoever's in that role, BCBA
Mhm.
parent, and when we were kind of like away from the table and in our own little
Right.
meeting, and we could agree on it. It went well. So
Mhm.
BCBA should understand that it's not just the IEP meeting, the 3-year evaluation, updating the IEP, but you can have this separate meeting. It might be helpful, might be a good idea to do as well.
Right, and I think that, like, that what you just said was really impactful. I think talking with the teacher away from the team is the way to do it, because I mean, a teacher doesn't want to feel humiliated in front of their team, because like you said, there could be a whole bunch of people sitting in that
Yeah.
IEP meeting. You could have the principal, the assistant principal, the LEA, the parent, the other people, the gen ed teacher. I mean, you have quite a few people sitting
Right.
in that meeting, and you don't want to start ripping apart somebody's IEP or BIP in front of in front of the whole team. So you doing it in a smaller setting, setting up a meeting with the parent and the teacher and talking about it, collaborating on it in that type of manner is definitely the way, that I would suggest, so that they
Right.
feel more
Right.
comfortable rather than do it in front of everybody.
Yeah, sometimes removing them. And yeah, I've been in meetings with, also you had a state mediator, and then you had an advocate
Right.
or two advocates, and just
Mhm.
sometimes just getting them to talk in a smaller setting.
Yes. Right, absolutely.
Right. All right. So this is a topic we're both very interested in, and that's collaboration. I know we talked about that a lot today, but there's a lot to say. So let's talk about, again, you have the special education teacher in that meeting, but let's not forget you do have that general education teacher. Of course, you have the parent. Speech is in that meeting a lot of the time. By the way, speech, just so you know, guys, they don't have to stay the whole time. They can do their part and leave. That's normal. So if you see them getting up and leaving, that they should stay for the whole time, but that's okay too. Then you have occupational therapists. Of course, you have school psychologists during those 3-year meetings. You could have an administrator might be there. They might not be there. Chances are, if you're coming in as a BCBA, there's a high chance an administrator will be there, even if there's another. Sometimes they're kind of protective, suspicious, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes not, but it can happen. So is there any, what would you say in terms of strategies for all these folks in there, not just the teacher, these other folks? Any thoughts on that? what do you find for building good working relationships that other BCBAs can maybe get tips on?
I do believe in strong collaboration with all of the team members. Something that I do, I don't know that it's necessarily related to this, but I do collaborate with the other team members in my practice now. For example, I do have clients that have, let's say, play therapy or speech therapy and
Okay.
occupational therapy, and I do collaborate with them, and I will take time out of my schedule to go observe them in their therapy so that I do know what they're working on in their therapy. And I feel that doing that does build that collaborative relationship and a sense of trust so that they know that I am interested in what they're doing and that I'm interested in just trying to see how we can work together. And they will also do the same. They want to see what we are doing in our sessions so that they
Yeah.
know what we're doing in ABA so that we can collaborate in as well as we can. So I believe in just, you know, reaching out with that olive branch by just saying, "Hey, I have a lot of respect for what you do. I'd really like to see what you do. Not only do I want to say that I have a lot of respect for you, I want to see exactly how you're working with this client. Is there a time that I could observe so I can see how you work with this client? Because that will give me a better idea of maybe techniques that we're doing that are similar. I'd like to get an idea of how you're working on that AAC with the client. So that will really help us in our
Right.
practice. Maybe my tech doesn't really know how to use that AAC device. I really need to get a better idea. And I would like it if you could maybe train us how to use it so that we can use it properly. So just really collaborating with the other team members, not just at the IEP table, but developing those relationships outside of the IEP.
Yeah, I like
Picking
that.
picking up the phone and calling them, getting permission from the parents and talking with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if it makes a happy teacher, a happy speech pathologist, it'll make a happy
Mhm.
parent and it'll make a much happier IEP meeting. And that's what we'd like.
And yeah,
And
and it's for the child's benefit. I mean, what is the ultimate goal? It's to benefit the child. So the more we
um,
can work together as a team, the better it is for the child in the long run.
and the speech pathologist is such a critical piece because there is overlap with maybe I'll let you speak to that, but as BCBAs, it seems like there's overlap between what you do and really a lot of what the speech pathologist does. Like you mentioned AAC devices and PECs and communication, you're working on those goals as well. So it would
Mhm.
be great to see what they're doing in the school. They're usually a lot of times it's more small group with them. Sometimes they're actually teaching a class.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like that idea of watching them,
Right.
observing as well. And like you said, so if it's a situation where they're getting an RBT in the class and you're coming in as the BCBA, you actually have time to build those relationships before that IEP meeting and present
Yes.
yourself as reinforcement. And then that does make the meeting easier. If you're just coming into the meeting, it might be a situation where you have no choice because they don't let you in the school. That if they do, it does give you time, right? Have you been in that kind of?
Mhm. Yes. Yes, absolutely. For example, right now I am working in a school, and my RBT is assigned to a little girl in the school, and the client has occupational therapy, speech therapy, and we go along to every
Hmm.
therapy and we help her, we support her in her behavior in her therapy sessions. But it also gives us so much more information about what she's doing within her therapy sessions. And so it gives me all the information I need so that I am knowledgeable when I go into her IEP. So I can speak to those things. Like you said, I can provide reinforcement on those therapy, in the session, in the IEP. But anyway, no, we collaborate as much as possible. If there are techniques that they're using that are in alignment with ABA techniques, I will certainly do what I can to reinforce them in what we do and
Hmm.
vice versa. If they see what we're doing and they find that it's helpful, they often will change what they're doing and how they're doing it so that it aligns with what we are doing. So,
And I think BCBAs, so that's a unique position. BCBAs going into the schools, use that time as not just business, not just, okay, I need to go here and then leave and go. Keep it as that should be a time where you're building relationships with the school. That should be a time
mhm,
where you are reaching out to teachers, maybe administrators, smiling, making
yes,
yourself as reinforced, as presentable, as a team player, talking to people. How are you? How was your weekend? How was your summer? I guess you can say
right,
that now this time of the year.
mhm,
But yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think that's a great point.
right. And those are, basic things that you just mentioned. You're absolutely right. Like you maybe wouldn't even think about those things, but it's true. Just walking into the building, get to know the staff, introduce yourself to the school leadership team. Who is the principal? I'd like to meet the principal. Hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a BCBA working with so and so. I'm really excited to be at your school, and I'm looking for ways to collaborate with your team. I'm very excited to be working with you.
Yeah. Be confident. I think you should be confident too. I'll never forget. I had this one BCBA come in, and I think it was part of the due process, but she came in to observe, and she was just visibly uncomfortable around the team. She was just, you could just see it in her. And, I was just like, I really just want to tell her, please be more confident. You should be like, you're the representative. You should be happy to be here. Don't be intimidated
Right.
by us. There's more of us than you, but I think that's good. Okay, so let me get into the disagreement. I want to touch, because there's something I want to touch on. A big sensitive part, again, you know better than anyone, is gen ed time. Okay. So a lot of times you have parents. So, you might have a student in a self-contained class. Maybe they're all day except for lunch and electives or whatever. There's a certain time where they're percentage wise, they are part of gen ed, right? So how do you navigate this? Let's say a parent says, I want more gen ed time. Team maybe doesn't as much. And what I know this comes up a lot in IEPs, is in an increase of time with non-disabled peers, or we call more general education time, right? How do you work with
Right.
that when that comes up? And what advice can you give BCBAs?
Right. That is a very challenging topic for sure.
I didn't
Because,
say this would be easy.
it really does depend upon the child and the situation. I mean, because I have worked on both sides of the fence, as an educator and as a BCBA. And as an educator, you do often come into contact with general education teachers and administrative teams who feel that the child is not quite ready to be in general education. And that can vary from school to school. There may be schools where they have full inclusion. I actually live in Arizona, in Tucson. Excuse me. And there is a school district down here where they do not have pull out at all. The kids are fully included all of the time. And
Wow.
so they have like a one-on-one paraprofessional who accompanies a child when needed, but there are no self-contained classrooms at all in the
Wow.
entire school district.
Wow.
So it really does vary by the school district and the school. But that is one issue that I did have a lot of difficulty with when I was a special education teacher. I am a real advocate for inclusion. And I really do feel that students do not have to earn time in the general education environment, that they do need it, that children do need time around their typical peers in order for them to learn the skills that their neurotypical peers are exhibiting. Sometimes neurotypical peers are not even exhibiting behaviors that we want them to emulate, but we want them to be around their typical peers. The world is not a self-contained classroom. The world is general education. We want them to be in the general education environment. That is the goal. So that is a really a very strong, hot topic for me. But and then the parents, as you said, what do we do when the parent wants the child to be in general education? But maybe they are having some challenging behaviors. Let's say the school really doesn't feel that they're ready to go into general education. Those are the types of things where maybe we sit down with the school team. You can call an IEP meeting whenever needed. It doesn't have to be an annual IEP or a 6-month review. You can ask the school team. Well, Dan, you can talk to the parent and ask the parent to call a meeting. It could be a school meeting or it could be an IEP meeting, but you could just ask for a meeting with the school team and talk about perhaps making a plan for, starting to include the student more and more in the general education classroom. How can we do this? We don't want to say no, never, this isn't going to happen. The child isn't ready, because that's not an option. We want the child to be in general education, and that should be the goal. The goal should be inclusion. Like, you can't say, well, no, just like you can't say this child is never going to go out into the real world. Of course, the child is going to go out into the real world. So the child should be allowed to go into the general education environment. How are we going to make this work? How are we going to help this child become successful around his typical peers? We have to make that happen. So let's work on a plan to make this happen. And I've worked with administrators that will fight tooth and nail to not make this happen. And we've had to bring in advocates. Well, when I was a teacher, we had, parents were bringing in advocates and lawyers, and it's very sad. I mean, as an educator, it made me very sad to see and to hear, principals, administrators talk about behind the scenes, in their offices, hear what they had to say about how children are not ready and how they're not going to be in gen ed. When hell freezes over, then they're going to go into gen ed. Well, that's not right. That's not right. So anyway, getting back to it, I would just say, make a plan. Let's come up with a plan for inclusion. You can fade them in. Let's work on fading them slowly in. What kinds of supports can we put into place to get them into general education? I guess you have to look at things like, is an RBT allowed into the school? I mean, if the RBT is allowed in the school, how can we slowly fade them in with support into the classroom? Can the school provide a one-on-one? That is a very hot topic as well, because a lot of
That's
schools
another
don't
hot
have the
topic.
funding for a one-on-one, right, Dan?
Another
So
hot topic.
that's another hot topic. So, of course, the end goal is independence. You want the students to be able to be independent in the general education setting, but you can start working on a plan with support. How can the child go in with support and slowly fade the support so that the child can be there more and more independently over time?
So I'm glad you said that. So BCBA is listening to this. Listen, you can start with 20 minutes a day. Let's say 100
Yes.
minutes a week. Let's compromise. Maybe the parent wants an hour or two. Let's compromise with something smaller. And then let's reconvene in 2 or 3 months and see how it's going. If it's going well, we can bump that up and then we can meet in another 2 or 3 months. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Schools might not tell you that, but there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if they're saying, nope, no more time, then you say, well, where's your data? If they have data that the kid's destroying the room during that time, there's something to talk about. If they don't have the data showing that, then what do they have to stand on? And then again,
Exactly.
so you can make a piecemeal plan. Okay. So you can do that with the school. You can come to an agreement, and more gen ed time is a tough issue. And from the school district perspective, it could be general education teachers resistant to that. There could be politics in play. They might have large classrooms already, and just, it's an extra responsibility in there for that time. So there's a lot to bounce, but I don't know if BCBAs necessarily know that, but who don't have experience in special education in the schools, is that you can make a plan, you can gradually increase it, you can meet in a few months and then another few months. You can ask for the
Right.
data, by the way, too.
Exactly. Ask for the data. Show me the data.
All right, let's get to one more question today. So looking ahead, so we'll do one more question, then a poll, and then get to the next part of the seminar. So looking ahead, what advice would you give to BCBAs? They want to become stronger leaders within school districts. They want to have a lasting impact on special education services beyond just writing behavior plans and IEPs. What would be your big advice for them?
I would say really work on building those relationships with your team, with the IEP team. Be a part of it. You don't want to be separate from it. Work on collaboration and be part of the team and build those relationships. Find a way to mentor those teachers and have them trust you. Build that trust, and then you can teach them how to collect data and write better BIPs, write better accommodations. They can write a better IEP with your support. They really can. But we have to build those relationships first and build that trust. But it is possible. Stay humble. You don't want to come in as that stereotypical BCBA. Come in and be humble and build that rapport with your teachers and your IEP team. And you can make a very significant difference with your team. I've been so fortunate. I've been working with so many school teams out here in Tucson. And
Okay.
I've been told, like, sometimes my clients have graduated and gone on to other schools, but I've been told, you're welcome to come back here anytime, Wendy. We loved working with you. And I was actually told by one school, you're not like the other BCBAs that have come here.
Sure.
And, and I've wondered why. I should have asked them why. I don't know why. I guess it's just because I come in humble. I don't come in as, I don't have the approach that like I know it all or that I know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. I don't. And even if I were a BCBA for 10 years, I still wouldn't know all the answers. But I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to work with the team to see what they need and see how I can help, if I can help, and how I can help. I want to help, and I make that very clear. And even if you don't have the educational background, you can still help. You can still make it very clear that you're here to help. You're not here to teach the team or to tell the team you're doing this wrong. Be there to be a support and help. That's what I would tell them. And just make sure that they know that you are here for the same reason that they are. You're here to help, this client reach their goals, and you're not here to tell the teachers what they're doing wrong. You're here to help them. You just want to make their lives easier. You understand that they have a really hard job. What they're doing is really tough.
Right.
And you want to make their lives easier. And by giving them some support, you will make their lives easier. So that's what I would want to impart, I guess.
Right. Right. And I think that's the key right there. It's appreciating and I'll get into this in the second part of the seminar, but the stress that they go under, the classroom management piece that they have to deal with, all the IEPs they have to write, all the behavior plans they have to write, the progress reports, the difficult parents, the advocates, everything that they have to go through on a day-to-day. It's a very stressful job to be a special education teacher. So to have that kind of helicopter overall image that you're here for this kid and for that service, and you're looking after them, and they have all this going on with them, and being appreciative of that and empathetic and being a team player. So I'm really glad that you shared that today with BCBAs, and I think that's amazing advice. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.